A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is the English Majalis, third Muharram, Majalis recited by Moulana Syed Safi Haider from New Jersey. The topic of the Majalis is going to be origins of the doctrines of Shi'ism. I would like to start by first inviting Brother Zain Iqbal for the recitation of Salam. Would everybody please welcome him with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa arjil faraj.
رو رو کے بابا جان سے کہتی تھی فاطمہ بابا میں کیا کروں دیوی کو بالا میں میرا گھر اجڑ گیا ایک دوپہر میں ہائے مقدر بکھر گیا بابا میں کیا کروں اونو محمد اپنے ابو جد کی تھے مثال زینب کے دونوں لال ماں نے انہیں نثار برادر پہ کر دیا پھر بھی میرا حسین جفا سے نہ بچ سکا بابا میں کیا کروں بابا میں کیا کروں قاسم سنو جوان کے نہایت حسین تھا کتنا ذہین تھا آدھا نے اسے کی لاش کو پامال کر دیا نسل حسن کو قطع کیا ہے کیا کیا بابا میں کیا کروں فرزند میرا کتنا جری اور دلیر تھا شیروں کا شیر تھا میں دیکھتی رہی میرا باس مر گیا شان کٹا کے نہر پر غازی گزر گیا بابا میں کیا کروں بابا मैं क्या करूं सलवात अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला
محمد وعلى محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد حسين الغريب الغريب الحسين حسين الشهيد الشهيد الحسين حسين الغريب الغريب الحسين حسين الشهيد الشهيد الحسين. You're the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad Mustafa, the son of Imam Ali and Lady Fatima, the purest of souls with utmost purity. Yet thousands of so-called Muslims show no loyalty. They saw you enter the holy cloak by the will of Allah. Yet shroudless they left you in the plains of Karbala. Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein Hussein al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussein Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein Hussein al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussein. You're the teacher of sacrifice and of charity. You even fed the horses of your enemies. From darkness into light you set were free. For surely he entered heaven with your mother's handkerchief. But when you pleaded for mighty Asghar, who was just thirsty, and asked what they fed to your infant baby, Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein Hussein al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussein Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein Hussein al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussein. You're the lantern of guidance for all the world to see, the ark of salvation for all humanity. Those who fought in your light called out your name. In your arms you carried them back till only you remained. Sakina, your daughter, went from crying in your arms to seeing your head on a spear in the court of Sham. Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein Hussein al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussein Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein Hussein al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussein. No Qasim, no no Muhammad, no Abbas, no Akbar, no Asghar, you lost them all so fast. Oh Allah, please accept this humble sacrifice. These were the words of our Imam when Asr time arrived. Oh Allah, what has he lost, he who loses you? But oh Allah, what can he lose, he who finds you? Hussein al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussein al-Husayn, Husayn al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Husayn, Husayn al-Gharib, al-Gharib al-Husayn, Husayn al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Husayn. You're the savior of Islam, in our faith you did revive. Today we call Ya Mahdi, without him we are deprived. For surely he grieves over tortured beloved. And when we lament the trials faced by Masa'ib, Ya Mahdi, tonight we vow and we grieve with you. In the light of Al-Hussein, together we'll fight for truth. Hussein al-Gharib, al-Gharib al-Hussein, Hussein al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Hussein, Hussein al-Gharib, Hussein al-Shahid, Hussein ya Hussein ya Hussein, Hussein al-Gharib, al-Gharib al-Hussein, Hussein al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Hussein, Hussein al-Gharib, al-Gharib al-Hussein, Hussein al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Hussein. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Jazakallah. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before I'd like to invite the speaker, I have a small poem to recite on the Shahadat of Hazrat Hur. Hur the brave, whose submission I crave, with the dust on his beard who can compete? For he is Hur the slave, who Allah forgave when he put his head at Shabir's feet. Bawazibalan salawat. Allahumma sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa arjil farajam. I would now like to invite the speaker, Moulana Syed, Safi, Haider, Abidi, to recite the Majalis. Please recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa arjil farajam.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا بالقاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وصلى اللهم على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين. قال الله الحكيم في القرآن الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإن من شيعته لإبراهيم. The topic for discussion for the first 5 nights of this Ashra is the development of Shi'ism as it particularly relates to the historical development of the aqaid of the Shia. And we had been talking about different aspects of this aqaid. The first lecture set up the basic structure for the methodology of our discourse. And the second, in the first, we also mentioned a little bit about the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that there is no God but the one God. And in the second lecture, the topic was to relate the justice of God to a more practical level, whereby the wilayat and the imamat of Amir al-Mu'mineen itself is a testimony to the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, I would like to conclude the discussion on the sifat, or the nature of Allah, so that tomorrow and the day after we can talk about Nabuwah, Imamah, and Qiyamah. One of the questions that those who testified to the existence of divinities or divinity in general get asked is whether or not one can see God. It is very important for us to understand that while we cannot see God with the physical eyes, we can see God with the eyes of the heart. While we cannot comprehend God with our physical eyes, we can understand Him with the eyes of our mind. And the eyes of the heart and mind are such that they can really try to comprehend the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a way that the physical eyes cannot. And it is important for us to note, as followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt, that the A'immah multiple times they had been asked whether or not we can see God. Multiple times, not just once. And the Imams replied yes. In one such instance, one of the Imams was asked, do the believers see God before the day of resurrection? Before Yawm al-Qiyamah? And the Imam says yes. They ask him how? They say, the Imam responded by saying that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the arwah in alam al-arwah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked them the question, alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? The ruh of the mu'mineen responded yes. And therefore, the Imam said that they saw Allah at that time. The companion or the questioner asked the Imam whether or not the Imam sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly right now. And the Imam says, this is related to the Imam says that the Imam sees God. How? The questioner asked the Imam whether or not he would be able to transmit the fact that the Imam sees God even now to the masses. The Imam says no. No. Because the Imam says, because those who want to doubt you will continue to doubt you regardless. You say the Imam sees God, they say, how can the Imam see God? You say that the Imam witnesses the Jalal and the Jamal and the Sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say, how is that possible? When we, in 2020, when we say that somebody experiences Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are ridiculed. Why? I'm not talking about the veracity of the claims of those individuals who in 2020 say they have seen the truth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. But the fact that anybody who says they see God, and at the same time they say God cannot be put in a test tube, God cannot be measured, God's sifat cannot be understood, God's characteristics cannot be comprehended. They say that God cannot be understood, but at the same time they're saying they're comparing God. So first of all, we have to understand that the sifat that we perceive to be the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because to talk about the sifat of God means that you are limiting God. And God is limitless. God cannot be limited. Just like in the previous discussions, we mentioned that the names of God are not God. The highest of the names of Allah is Allah. But the names of God are not God, because when we say names of God, we put limitations on them. And the God is limitless. Therefore, any name that we attribute to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a comparison, and it is indeed inherently flawed. Because God cannot be comprehended. God cannot be understood. God cannot be realized by the physical eyes. And we have to understand that every religion comes from the same source. Historically, the development of religion came from all the same source, which for us is the Muhammadan reality. حقيقة محمدية، حقيقة علوية، حقيقة فاطمية، حقيقة الحسني، حقيقة الحسيني. But throughout time, human beings changed the religions. Every religion comes from one source. All of the divinity understood is the Haqiqat al-Muhammadiyya. Every religion, just like every human being comes from the source of Adam, every thought, every perspective, every analysis of religion comes from the ideas of the Muhammadan reality. And this reality is such that it cannot be, even the Muhammadan reality, which is not God, which is the first creation of God, cannot be understood. Can we understand how the Prophet Muhammad received revelation? No. Can we understand the event of Mi'raj except through revealed hadith? No. Or the Quran? No. Can we understand what it means that the Prophet Muhammad read salat for 124,000 prophets, and that he became closer to God than Qaba Qawsainu aw Adna? No. But then we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the Muhammadan reality is such it cannot be understood, imagine the nature of the God that Muhammad was sent by. Imagine the nature and the characteristics of the reality of that deity that sent Muhammad. Imagine the sifat, imagine the traits of that deity. Now I should mention, like I said before, traits are not God. Traits are not God. Traits are limitations. He who says that Allah belongs to a how has attributed a cause that pre-exists cause. He who says why has limited Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He who says when has attributed temporal limitations on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if we are talking about how, when, why, where, and where, of course, is a limitation of space. God is not how, He is the how. He is the why. He is the reason for the creation of the world. He is that Lord. He was Lord when there was nothing. And that when there was something, He became the Malik of that something. He is that Ilahi. That was Ilahi when there was absolute darkness and nothing existed in this world. He was that Rabb. He was a Rabb before there was creation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the beautiful hadith says, I was a hidden treasure. I desired to be known, therefore I created this world, this universe, this existence, mankind. We cannot comprehend God, no. One of the Imams, this was Imam al-Ridha alayhi salatu wasalam, he was asked by, I believe it was Ma'mun or his Darbari, that say something so that we can become true worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, this is the man of Banu al-Abbas. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Imam is asked to say something. The Imam ascends the mimbar and he waits a little while. He waits a little while. And then he says, this is the first sentence of what he says, the first step to knowing Allah, to worshipping Allah, is to know Him. But how can we know Him? if we do not comprehend him? How can we know him if we cannot understand him? That seems like a complete, utter contradiction. But of course, faith can work in the realms of polar opposites in such a way that the opposites complement each other. It's not either or. It could be both together. Of course, when we talk about Allah, we have to understand that attributing limitations to God means they're not God. Attributing characteristics to God means they're not God. God is the first without a first before him. His first is such that nothing comes before him. His last is such that nothing comes after him. And on the day of judgment, they say, nothing will remain except the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the day of judgment, the very least, the mu'mineen and the believers and the people will see the actual face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not a physical face, no. But the wujuh and the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will actually comprehend what God is and what God is not. Now, we can try to work on contradictions. We can try to work on negations and try to understand God based off of that. But remember, our imams are such that they themselves have said, like Imam Ali said, if all the veils of the limitations and distances between me and my Allah were removed from me, there would not be even an iota's worth of increase of faith, because Ali ibn Abi Talib had already experienced Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the highest levels of reality. He had known God from the highest levels of knowledge, and he had already understood and comprehended, digested and accepted the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before anything came into being. Therefore, there is no increase in the iman of Ali, because Ali is haqq and haqq is with Ali. There is no increase. Awwaluna Muhammad, awsatuna Muhammad, akhiruna Muhammad, kulluna Muhammad. The iman of one Muhammad is the iman of the middle Muhammad, is the iman of the last Muhammad. The faith of the first is the same as the faith of those in the middle, which is the same as the faith of those at the very end. Those are the imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Those are the harbingers of justice. Those are the ones who say that the Muhammad in reality, that all the imams and the Prophet himself is a manifestation of that same reality. Those are the ones who have the highest level of iman of Allah in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the prophets of God before Prophet Muhammad had asked signs to see the power of God. They were limited, and they were not limited, of course, but they were not at the level of Muhammad or Ali and Fatima, Hassan, Hussein, and Zain al-Abidin until Mahdi. Of course. You see the example of Khalil, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, or Nabi Uzair. And there are different examples throughout the prophetic lives of the prophets. Nabi Ibrahim questions God, saying, how is it that you will bring the dead back to life? The response that he gets is, Ibrahim, do you not believe in Allah? He says, yes, I believe, but this is to give itminan on my qalb. And he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, fine, take a few birds, kill them, grind up their meats, and put them around the mountaintops around you. Come off of those mountains and call on the birds, and the birds who were dead and whose meat has been mixed and butchered came back to life. And Nabi Ibrahim had that iman of his heart. This is the same Ibrahim whose iman or whose itminan qalb was such that he got thrown into the fires of Namrud. He did not care as to what the kuffar had said. He did not care as to what Namrud wanted to do with him. As long as he was witnessing the jalal of God, the jamal of God, he was fine. But he himself wanted more certainty. At the one hand, Ali is saying even if all the veils were removed, there would be no increase in certainty because Ali is at the height of certainty. And at the other time, you have Ibrahim saying, I want more certainty. Nabi Uzair is another example. Nabi Uzair is another example. He is the Nabi responsible, I believe, when the Romans sacked Jerusalem. He was the Nabi responsible for reconstructing that city. Or he was alive, and Allah gave him that life that he saw the reconstruction of Jerusalem. When Nabi Uzair basically saw Jerusalem destroyed, he said, how is it that the dead come back to life? Nabi Uzair had a twin brother. Nabi Uzair, when he questioned God, he had a little food with him, and he was with his donkey. Allah, when Nabi Uzair questioned Allah, Allah made Uzair go into his sleep for 100 years. When Nabi Uzair woke up after 100 years, Nabi Uzair was fresh. He thought that he'd only fallen asleep for a few hours. He looked at his food. The food had dried. And he looked at the donkey, and the donkey was in bare bones. And then he saw the reconstructed Jerusalem. And Allah gave him itminan of qalb when that happened. Nabi Isa is known for his mysticism. To experience the realities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi Isa goes, and he sees the realities of Allah when he is wandering in the desert. According to the Christian tradition, he is tempted by shaitan and he defeats shaitan. Now, imagine being with the Imam. Imagine being with the prophets. Imagine being that reality that was the manifestation of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did the Prophet ask? Nothing. Ali's iman was such that it always came to defend the Prophet, to protect the Prophet. And this was not just the iman of Ali. This was the iman that Abu Talib had instilled in the very atoms and the very minutest of particles of his children. You see, they question, they say, how is Abu Talib Muslim? I say not only is Abu Talib Muslim or mu'min, he is of a higher character. He is Wali ibn Wali ibn Wali ibn Wali. That Abu Talib is a Wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the son of a Wali of God, and the son of a Wali of God. Why? How is it that this chain of Walis continues? What is the proof? Imagine, how many times has the Kaaba been destroyed? How many times? Yazid sacks the Kaaba. In our modern times, I remember hearing that in the 60s or 70s that a man declared himself to be the Mahdi. Of course, it was a false Mahdi. And he went inside the Kaaba, and the Saudi Arabian authorities, they sauteed him to death. Why is it that in the majority of the cases, when the Kaaba was destroyed, Allah did not come to defend the Kaaba? But when it comes to the story of Abdul Muttalib, Allah comes to defend the Kaaba. When it comes to the reality of Abdul Muttalib, when Abdul Muttalib makes the dua to God, God accepts it. When Abdul Muttalib is the munadi, Allah listens to his nida. When Abdul Muttalib is the crier to God, God listens to his cries. When أبرهة ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل. Imagine, this is the year of Amul Fil. Abraha's army is about to attack the Kaaba. Abraha's forces are about to attack the Kaaba, and they have elephants with them. The chief of the Ahl al-Makkah or Quraysh is Abdul Muttalib, and Abraha confiscates, he steals about 100 or so camels of Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib goes to him and he says to him, listen, Abraha says, I have come to destroy the house that you worship in or towards. Abdul Muttalib was like, I'm not worried about that. I have 100 camels you took from me, you stole from me, I want them back. Abraha said, I thought you were the highest ranking, most worthy of all the Ahl al-Makkah, of all the Quraysh. And you are worried about camels, not the house of God that you worship, not the house of the God that you worship. Abdul Muttalib, he says, the house is God's, the camels are mine. Of course, Abdul Muttalib, before leaving the city of Mecca at that time, he made a dua that's saying, this is your house, Allah, protect it. Protect it. And of course, we know the story of Ababil throwing stones at the elephants, killing the elephant by pelting them with small stones. This narration, this Quranic surah is a proof that Abdul Muttalib was a wali. And not only that, all of the generations before Abu Talib, right up to Ismail and Ibrahim, are awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right up to that time, Abu Talib is a wali, ibn wali. These are the ones who came from the pure loins and the pure wombs. The Prophet said, not even a single instance of marriage had occurred except within the Islamic framework of nikah, within the Prophet's lineage and within the Prophet's ancestry. Not even a single instant outside that. Why? Because they had already accepted the wilayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had already accepted the wilayat of the prophets of God. And they themselves were the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They themselves were the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were the ones who protected the religion when it needed protection. They were the ones who found Zamzam after generations of not having Zamzam. They were the ones who protected Kaaba. They were the ones who protected the religion of God. They were the ones who protected the identity of Muhammad. I talked about Abdul Muttalib. Now let's talk about Abu Talib. Abu Talib is such that when his father Abdul Muttalib is about to pass, he says to his sons, I am about to leave now. I want to know which one of you will take up the leadership of the Quraysh and which one of you will care for Muhammad. All the other sons, they go for the leadership. Abu Talib says, no, I want to take care of the son of my brother, my deceased brother, Abdullah. and Abdul Muttalib gives the leadership of the Banu Hashim and the custodianship of the Kaaba and the taking care of Muhammad to Abu Talib. Abu Talib, the one who showed that he was a follower of Muhammad. Abu Talib, the one, while others said La ilaha illallah, of course Abu Talib said La ilaha illallah. Abu Talib showed La ilaha illallah and Muhammad Rasulullah. Abu Talib showed that he was the one to protect the Prophet. When the Prophet was with Abu Talib, when Abu Talib and Khadija were alive, not even a single person could kick the Prophet out of Mecca. But as soon as the Prophet lost the guardianship and the shadow of Abu Talib, when Abu Talib left this world, he felt the need to make hijrah. For God knows how much suffering Abu Talib went through for Prophet Muhammad. The Banu Hashim were blockaded in Sha'ib Abu Talib. They were put under sanctions of the highest sort. Nobody would trade with them. Nobody would give them food and water except a few associates of Khadija. Nobody would give them sustenance. And the Khadija al-Kubra and Abu Talib and Khadija were the ones who protected and defended the Prophet. And so much so, with regards to Abu Talib, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًا فَهَدَى. And then the next verse is about Khadija, وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. We found you an orphan and we gave you protection. That protection in the Quran is Abu Talib. That Aghna in the Quran is Khadija. How many Muslims can say that they were there to protect the Prophet when he was alive? There were wealthy Muslims, yes. But nobody protected the Prophet except Abu Talib. And Khadija. When Khadija leaves this world, and there are different narrations as to how wealthy she was before Islam. She was the wealthiest of all of Arabs. She was Malikatul Arab. She was the queen of the Arabs. When she dies, when she leaves this world, Prophet Muhammad does not even have a kafan to give her. According to some traditions, when she leaves this world, Prophet Muhammad receives Jibreel. And Jibreel says to the Prophet that I have 5 kafan for you. The first is for Khadija, who has just left this world. The second is for you. The third is for Fatima. The fourth is for Ali. And the fifth is for Hassan. And the Prophet says, where is the kafan for Hussein? And Jibreel says he will die without a kafan. He will die without a kafan. When Abu Talib leaves this world and when Khadija leaves this world is when the Prophet makes his hijrah. He mourns for a whole year that he makes his hijrah. And the person that he entrusts with taking care of the final debts that he owed to the Quraysh and making sure that his life is protected is none other than the wasi of Abu Talib, Ali ibn Abi Talib, whereby the Quraysh had decided in one last act. The Banu Hashim were known for their valor. If one tribe had decided to kill Muhammad, the Quraysh knew that the Banu Hashim could take vengeance on them very easily. Therefore, they decided that they were going to come up with one person from each of the tribes of the Quraysh. At the night, they were going to attack Muhammad. And Prophet Muhammad received news of this. And he says to Ali, sleep in the bed for tonight. And he said, will you be protected, Ya Rasulullah? He said, yes. The Quraysh are thinking Prophet Muhammad is sleeping in his bed the whole night. Their swords are drawn and they want to attack Prophet Muhammad and kill him. When they unveil the person lying in the bed, it is Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Ali is basically saying to them, my life is worthless. My father, Abu Talib, instilled in me the fact that my life is worth it. What is the most important is to me, what is of only importance to me is the life of Muhammad. This is the lesson of Abu Talib that he taught them in Shaib Abu Talib. Every night he would get one of his sons and he would move Prophet Muhammad from bed to bed, replacing him with one of his sons. So just in case there was an assassination attempt on the Prophet himself, one of his sons would get killed and Prophet Muhammad would be saved. Recite salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is that Muhammad. This is that Abu Talib. This is that Ali. This is that Khadija. Their grandeur, their greatness cannot be comprehended by any one individual. And of course, we see this protection of Islam in all of the Imams and the close companions of the Imams, the true companions of the Imams. Yes, we see that. We see that their faith was not fake news. We see that their faith was imbued with the love of Allah, the Prophet, and the Imam. Their faith was La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. And their faith was that Ali is the wali of God. Their faith was Inna al-Husayna misbah al-Huda wa safinat al-Najah. Their faith was the Prophet's statement that Hassan and Hussein are your Imams, whether they are sitting or standing. Their faith was in 12 Imams. Their faith was in the Mahdi. Their faith was in Fatima al-Zahra. Their faith was in that. But there's a very big difference between the companions of the Prophet and the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim. Salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a big difference in that. Big difference. When the Prophet is leading prayer in Masjid al-Nabi, in the Masjid al-Madinah, all the companions are there. They hear the tijarat bells coming, the bells of the merchants coming, and basically all the companions leave the prayer. And the Prophet is left basically stranded. Except for Imam Ali and a few companions, the Prophet is left stranded. This is the companions of the Prophet. These are the companions of the Prophet. The companions of Imam Ali, when they were fighting, Abdullah ibn Abbas was fighting with Amir al-Mu'mineen against Muawiyah, alongside Amir al-Mu'mineen against Muawiyah. The time for prayer came. And Imam Ali said, it's time for prayer. Abdullah ibn Abbas set up the musalla so we can pray. Set up the situation for prayer. And he says, he looks at Imam Ali and says, Ya Ali, this is a battlefield. Heads are flying. You're covered with blood. There are limbs flying everywhere. How are you going to pray? This is not the time for prayer. And Ibn Abbas, remember, it's related to Prophet Muhammad and Imam Ali. He is the son of al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. He says, Ibn Abbas, Imam Ali says to him, Ibn Abbas, I did not expect this from you. And of course, we have the companions of Imam Hussein. On the day of Ashura, when the time for Dhuhr comes, the companions say, Mawla, it is time for the prayer. We wish to offer our last prayers behind you. And the Imam says, you reminded us of the prayers. Ja'alaka Allahu min al-musallin. May Allah make you among those who pray. And they prayed. Imagine the difference. Imam Ali is there. Imam Hussein is there. The companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ibn Abbas, who is Hibr al-Ummah, is saying, Ya Ali, this is not the time for prayer. And then the companions of Abu Abdullah are saying, it is war in both situations, the most dire battle in Karbala. And then they say, no, we still want to pray behind Imam Hussein. They still want to pray behind Imam Hussein. This is the level of the Iman of the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Yesterday we talked about the fact that the Ahlul Bayt had reached Karbala. Today I want to talk to you a little bit more about one of the cousins of Imam Hussein, Muslim ibn Aqil. Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu was-salam had received, before he arrived in Karbala, when he was still in Mecca, he had received dozens of letters saying, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we want to fight for you, from the people of Kufa, saying, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, the time is right for revolution. The people of Kufa are ready for your revolution. Come, we want to be with you, Ibn Rasulullah. So, Imam Hussein sends his cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil, to survey the situation as his representative. He brings the letter of the Imam. When Muslim goes to Kufa, originally he is at the house of al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Yazid finds out that Muslim is trying to survey the situation. And Muslim is gathering support and followers. And he believes at one time that the people of Kufa are sincere this time. They will fight for the Imam. Not what they did to Imam Hassan. No, but they will fight for the Imam. When Yazid, la'natullahi alayh, receives news of the qiyam of Muslim, and that Muslim was receiving fighters and supporters to fight Yazid in favor of Imam Hussein, he says to them, he sends Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Imagine. Now, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad enters the city of Kufa. He has a niqab on him. When the people of Kufa, they hear Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, they hear somebody has come, they think that it is Imam Hussein. because Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad has a niqab on him. They cannot see him. So they parade the city of Kufa. They started parading, welcoming Imam Hussein to the city of Kufa. When Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad finally reaches his destination, he unveils himself to be that murderous individual that caused the martyrdom and the shahadat of Muslim ibn Aqil. He is that individual that caused the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil. When Muslim ibn Aqil, in one situation, in one instance, they say that at one time, God knows how many Muslim ibn Aqil was leading the prayer. God knows how many followers he had in his prayer. When he was finished, he only had a few individuals. When Muslim ibn Aqil realized that it would be detrimental to Muqtada if he stayed, he went to the house of Hani ibn Urwa. And then, of course, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad realized that Muslim was at the house of Hani ibn Urwa, and he killed Hani. The second day, Muslim ibn Aqil decided that he was going to avenge the blood of Hani. And the Muslim ibn Aqil had the letter from Imam Hussein saying that he is my representative. Do as he says, basically. But the elders of Kufa said, if we receive direct command from Imam Hussein, that's the only time we are going to come fight Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Muslim ibn Aqil is left completely stranded. He has two of his sons with him. Now Muslim ibn Aqil is left wandering the city. At one time, he sits at an elderly woman's house, Muslim ibn Aqil. He sits at that elderly woman's house. He says to them, she sees him and says that, listen, Kufa is not safe anymore for anybody. Who are you? Where are you from? He tells her, this is Muslim ibn Aqil. And he says, I am from Medina. I am the cousin of Imam Hussein. She knows who he is. She welcomes him. She's a mu'mina. She's a follower of Ahlul Bayt. She welcomes him with open arms into her house. Then Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he finds out where Muslim is staying. He sends an army to them. When Muslim finds out, he leaves the house. She does not want him to leave. She wants to protect him. But his ghira could not stand that he be a trouble to anybody of his host. So he leaves the house. Muslim ibn Aqil fights and fights. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad has to send dozens upon dozens of men, one after the other, to fight Muslim. Muslim ibn Aqil beats all of them. And then finally they decide that they were going to dig a hole and cover it, and Muslim would fall in that hole. Muslim fell. He fell. He was captured. He was captured. They took him to the palace of Ibn Ziyad, handcuffed. They broke his lip. Now, Muslim was asked if he had any final wills. He said yes. I believe they say that he said, give me some water, I want to drink some water. He tries to drink, but the blood from his lip would contaminate the water. Every time he would try to drink, the blood would contaminate the water. And then they say that they say, Muslim, it is unfortunate for you that you do not have any water, but luckily for you, your master Hussein also did not have any water. Abu Abdullah al-Hussein was thirsty, so Muslim, bear this thirst for some time. You will see Rasulullah in some time. The second message that he has is for Imam Hussein. He says, tell my master that don't come to Kufa. Don't come to Kufa. He says to him, I will not tell your master, but they tied up Muslim and they threw him off of Darul Imara. after Karbala had taken place, after the battle had taken place, and the Asiran Karbala were being paraded in the city of Kufa, there came a time when the Asir came upon a body. That body was saying salam. Lady Zainab asked, whose body is this? She could not recognize that it was her cousin Muslim ibn Aqil, that it was her brother Muslim. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, Aunt Zainab, don't you recognize him? This is Chacha Muslim. This is our uncle Muslim. Lady Zainab, you were not there. You were not there. At least you were able to see your son's final bodies. But Muslim ibn Aqil has two sons who are still wandering the city of Kufa, who do not know where they will go after the death of their father. Inna lillah. وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون مات من حسين يا حسين يا
مولا مدینے والے خیمے سجا رہے ہیں وعدہ نبھانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے یہ در وہ پاک در ہے جو فاطمہ کا در ہے یہ پیارے مصطفیٰ کا مولا علی کا در ہے مکے تل میں آ گئے ہیں قرآن سنانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے اسلام نے پکارا قرآن نے صدا دی یسرب کا شہزادہ یسرب کی شہزادی نکلے سفر کو گھر سے کلمہ بچانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے رو رو کے بولی سغرا دل ڈوبتا ہے میرا میرا کیا مدینہ جنگل میں ہے بسیرا مجھ کو رلا گئے کیوں خوشیاں لٹانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے داماد کے دلارے بیٹی کے شہزادے یہ 3 دن کے پیاسے سب پھول مصطفیٰ کے تیرے کو ہیں یہی تو دریا بنانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے سب لٹ گئی کمائی اکبر نے برچھی کھائی اصغر نے تیر کھایا دیتی تھی ماں دہائی تیروں کے سائے میں ہے سجدے میں جانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے حل من کا استغاثہ جب دے چکا وہ پیاسا آواز ارجئی نے آ کر دیا دلاسا آ میرے پاس آ جا لاشیں اٹھانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے ایک شور تھا فلک پر کہتا تھا رب اکبر جبریل بادلوں کا جلدی بچھاؤ بستر جنت میں آ رہے ہیں قرآن بچانے والے مولا مدینے والے مولا مدینے والے کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے مولا مدینے والے
صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے بیمار ہوں مرتی ہوں بیمار ہوں مرتی ہوں یہ سب تم کو پتا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے جیسے روز سے دیکھا ہے محرم کا نیا چاند جیسے روز سے دیکھا ہے محرم کا نیا چاند یہ کیسے لکھوں بابا یہ کیسے لکھوں بابا کہ دل ٹوٹ گیا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے تم جب سے گئے گھر سے یہ گھر قبر ہے میری تم جب سے گئے گھر سے یہ گھر قبر ہے میری میں زندہ ہوں ایسے کہ میں زندہ ہوں ایسے کہ کوئی لاشا پڑا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے بابا مجھے ڈستی ہے یہ تنہائی وطن کی قبر میں کیا ہے.
خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے. خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے.
لوٹاتے ہیں گھر شام کے ہوتے ہی پرندے. لوٹاتے ہیں گھر شام کے ہوتے ہی پرندے. کنبہ میرا کیوں ابھی کنبہ میرا کیوں ابھی سفر میں ہی رہا ہے. خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے. خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے. بابا میرے اصغر کا تو کچھ حال سناؤ. بابا میرے اصغر کا تو کچھ حال سناؤ. اس بے زبان مجھ کو اس بے زبان مجھ کو کبھی یاد کیا ہے. خط فاطمہ صغرا نے
یہ بابا کو لکھا ہے. خط فاطمہ صغرا نے یہ بابا
کو لکھا ہے.